Let me start streaming. Get all that going. Yep. Ooh, I can hear myself. That's weird. All right.
Firebase tonight.
Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about some stuff. Alright, since most of you are here, we're going to get going, started on class. I don't have a lot to talk about before we get into our project groups, but I do have some things to talk about. Yeah, just a couple things. Okay. Alright, so the first thing is at the end of class today, at 9 o'clock, I'm going to have everyone come back, and we're going to do little mini presentations on what you've done so far. So every group will come up, someone will connect to the projector so we can see the work you guys have so far. You'll briefly talk about your project, what you guys are doing, what you're calling it, any problems you've had, and just kind of go over it, and then we'll ask you a couple questions maybe just to, you know, check on the progress, see how things are going. If there's anything cool you discovered or any cool APIs you're using or any problems you solved, let us know then. But it's basically just like the touch base, kind of like a demo day, you know, that you give to your boss. Hey, how are things going? We want to make sure progress is moving on. You guys aren't stuck on anything too severe, right? So every group will get about 5 minutes or so, and we'll do that to end up class since there's 5 groups, you know, 5-6 minutes. And then we'll go home. But otherwise, after we go over deployment, you'll be working in your groups the whole class until 9. So deployment, do we all remember how to deploy to GitHub Pages? Remember at least doing it. You may not remember how to do it. We'll go over it again, but we remember doing it. We did it once, a couple of times, right? You're supposed to do it for your homework, technically. So if you don't remember it by now, then the TAs, I'm sure, have gotten on your case about your homework links. But anyway, one of the things that GitHub Pages kind of allows us to do for this project is something called continuous deployment. And continuous deployment is really big in the industry right now. The idea behind it is you can write code, and then immediately when you check it into Git, you can deploy it to production and start testing it in production, right? Or you can have it deployed to your development system if you wanted. But the point is, every time you make a merge into master, you can immediately have that be deployed with your GitHub Pages, and you guys can go to the whatever.github.io or / whatever project, and you can see this stuff, right? You can see it live and play with it. So just in case you don't remember, there's a couple things you need. For one, you're going to need an index.html in the root of your repository, right? So I have this little one. It makes a little API call and a script tag, nothing serious, but it's an index.html. So this is our home page, right? I'm going to go ahead and deploy this to GitHub Pages. So what do? I go to the settings, scroll on down, find the GitHub Pages right here. Source, master branch. You can do a couple of things. You can do master branch or the master branch docs folder. We don't need to do the docs folder. The reason that's there is you could have a repository that, say, is just some library for something, right? But in the docs folder, you want a GitHub IO page so you can have like your API specifications and references deployed, right? So we don't need that. We just want to do master branch. You go ahead and save it. It's going to start deploying. There's going to be a few things that are automatically done for you. One, this enforce HTTPS is automatically checked, and you can't uncheck it. And that's okay. That's what we want. We want HTTPS. But this is going to cause some problems with your code. If you're doing anything locally with HTTP in your HTML files, they will no longer work. So every API call, every call to your assets needs to be over HTTPS if you're doing them manually. You know, you're not just linking. Once you deploy. So you can see if this comes up. Okay, it's ready. If I look at my code, even though it failed, right here I have this call to the OMDB API. It's an HTTPS, and it has to be an HTTPS. I verified that because the first time I pushed this up, I pushed it up with HTTP, and you literally can't make this API call. GitHub Pages shuts it down and says no mixed methods. So the easiest way to prevent that is to Control F in your code and look for HTTP and make sure that it's HTTPS before you push to master, right? Or before you open a pull request. It's kind of hard because you guys don't have the ability to switch between the two. You don't have any conditional stuff for your compilation. But you could potentially change that with assets if you can get creative. But anyway, that's kind of the most important thing. The other thing that's really important is these GitHub I/O pages are deployed on Linux servers. And that means a couple of things. One, all of the files are case sensitive. And so on a Windows machine in particular, it's very easy to have a file name image.img with a capital I in the image and reference it in your code with a lowercase I image.img. And it'll work just fine. On Linux, that is not the case, and you'll start getting a bunch of errors. General rule of thumb for web programming, everything should always be lowercase. You should have no spaces in any names, use forward slashes only, and use dashes, not underscores. That's pretty common. Sometimes in assets there's underscores, but usually the dashes are more likely to be seen. But the most important thing out of all of those is use lowercase only. For God's sakes, you will blow your brains out trying to figure out what's going wrong when you deploy to Linux and you have a capital somewhere that doesn't exist anymore, or you've misreferenced, right? It is an incredibly difficult thing to debug sometimes, and I don't recommend you getting that problem. So, that being said, those are things to watch out for. So if you have any asset links that have capitals or lowercase and it's just not consistent with the files that are in your repo, it's going to be a problem. On top of that, changing the casing in your Git repo, especially on a Windows machine, is near impossible. So whatever it's at right now, since you've already probably committed some stuff, you might as well just keep it at that casing. Anyway, the important point here is, with this GitHub Pages deployment, anything I do to change this page will now automatically be updated, right? So I look at this code. This is all my code. If I go ahead and go in here, let's close this. Let's check out master, git pull. Just make sure we have our latest. Okay, so it changed. Let's just add P. Added some new code. Right? We'll see what this does. I need to make a new branch because I can't push directly to master. Let's add, git commit, add new code. And we'll get push, new branch. It's going to go ahead and push that to GitHub for me. Whoop. I can go ahead and verify over here on GitHub. Oh, look at that new branch. Let's go ahead and open a pull request. We're good, we're good. I'm just going to override my merge privileges because it's my repo. Sorry, Chris. In real life, Chris would be mad. Now I go back to my code. All right, this is updated. And eventually, after a little while, because the deployment does take time, this will also say this is some new code. Give it a few minutes. It's not perfectly, you know, it's not 100% responsive because they do have to deploy over many servers, so you're lucky we get it this fast. Eventually it'll show up. Let's see how long I can refresh for. Hey, it showed up, right? So that is continuous deployment because I just merged into master and voila, GitHub Pages now has it. So you should be taking advantage of that. I would, right now, set up your GitHub Pages, whoever owns the repo, right? The other thing I'll mention is because you're going to have this stuff continuously deploy, I would take it upon yourself to not merge anything into master that doesn't work. So if you merge it in to master and it, you know, is invalid HTML syntax or the JavaScript just explodes, that's going to suck, right? And then someone's going to have to make a new PR just to fix that little bug. So when someone's about to merge a PR, especially big PRs that you can't validate and check with your eyes, pull them down to your machine and make sure they work. That's a good workflow, right? If you want that extra step of validation. Because as soon as you merge it in, it's finally deployed to GitHub Pages 5 minutes later, then you're going to be like, oh crap, it doesn't work. Alright, well, so-and-so make another PR to fix that bug you just caused, whatever. And this is the stuff that happens in real life. Thankfully, continuous deployment makes it easier to spot those problems, right? Because you can get to production quickly. But it still sucks, and no one wants to fix, come through and fix your garbage after the fact. So due diligence up front and make sure that the code you're pulling into the master branch actually works. That's not to say that your code's not working because you did something wrong. It could just be a difference between production and, not your machine, right? That happens too, so you won't always be perfect, but just at least give it a shot. Any questions on this setup right here with the GitHub Pages and how that all works? Cool. If you don't have questions, go ahead and work on your projects. Like I said, at 9 o'clock we'll reconvene. I'm not going to stream anymore the rest of the class because they'll be using the screens, so there's nothing for me to stream. So streamers, work on your projects.